week's drive, we turn some hairpins and do some cartwheels. Raise some dust and jump or bust. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week on the Italian island of Sardinia for the 39-lap Grand Prix of the Mediterranean, the fifth race of the season. Guido Capellini made full use of the familiar waters to grab his third consecutive pole position. Capellini in boat number 1 took the lead on the first lap, followed by Francesco Cantando in number 15. Capellini, the reigning world champion, has won 3 of the 4 races so far this year. The only threat to Capellini's 4th Grand Prix victory of the season was Singer Beer-sponsored driver Francesco Cantando. Cantando, who forced himself into second place early in the race, upped the pace in an attempt to shake the rhythm of the champ and force him into making a mistake. And the plan nearly worked, as Capellini made a number of uncharacteristic errors, keeping Cantando in contention for the lead. Leif Verhoeven took third place, the Saudi Arabian driver staying within reach of the leaders. In the battle for the lead, Cantando's aggression was to be his downfall. On lap 17, he tried to push past Capellini in a right-hand turn, but the Singer boat was left in pieces, Cantando failing to finish for the 3rd time this season. Cantando's crash benefited American Scott Gilman, second in the Drivers' Championship, who now found himself in line for a 3rd podium finish this year. Capellini, however, was unconcerned with proceedings behind him as he headed for home. Despite a late chase from Verhoeven in second place, the Italian was never in trouble in the final stages of the race. The same could not be said for Vincenzo Poli, who barely managed to control his boat after launching off a wave in the windy conditions. Capellini finished nearly 2 seconds ahead of Verhoeven in second place. Gilman's 3rd place means he is still in contention for the driver's title, with more than half the F1 powerboat season remaining. The next race is in Germany. We cross the Med now to Juni Harbour, 15 kilometres from Beirut, for the Rally of Lebanon, round 4 of the Middle East Rally Championship. Mohammed bin Sulayem of the UAE and the 12 times champion started the event in his new Subaru Impreza. He had to switch from his Ford Focus just before the rally for contractual reasons. Saudi Arabia's Abdallah Bakashab, 3rd in this event last year, drives his Focus off the start ramp and out onto Special Stage 1. Lebanon's Roger Fagali tackles Special Stage 1 in his Subaru. He would go on to win the stage. Local hero Jean-Pierre Nasrallah tackles the stage in his Subaru. He was runner-up last year and he won the event in 1995 and 97. Bakashab starts stage 4, setting the fastest time, but his hopes of a win went up in flames with his car after stage 6. Second place Roger Fagali starts stage 8 early on day 2. He would retire after the stage with a broken differential after the strains of the tarmac stage. With both Bakashab and Fagali out, Nasrallah had a fairly straightforward event, and a 3rd win on home soil looked likely as he put on a show for the appreciative crowds. Nasrallah arrives at the end of one of the last stages, and he knows that a victory is on the cards. Meanwhile, Ben Sulayem was learning his new car and wisely settled for a safe 2nd place overall to retain his lead in the FIA Middle East Rally Championship. Abdo Fagali claimed third place overall in his Mitsubishi Evo to lift him into second place in the championship. At the finish, in the middle of Beirut, Ben Sulayem celebrates his championship lead on the finish ramp, while Nasrallah celebrates victory with the winner's trophy. Ben Sulayem leads the title chase by 16 points from Fagali. Next, we skip to equatorial Kenya in Africa for the 50th Safari Rally. Safari means simply journey in the Swahili language. The original rally commemorated the crowning of Queen Elizabeth of Britain, and her youngest son, Prince Edward, flagged off British world champion Richard Burns. Finland's Tommi Mäkinen won the event last year by a whopping 12 minutes, and he made a good start to his defence on the varying terrain of Ngema, the first stage. Colin McRae, fresh from his Acropolis Rally win, was fired up for a good result, but the first gear grind was a far cry from the open roads of Greece. Championship leader Finn Marcus Gronholm was the first casualty as he retired minutes into the Ngema stage when his Peugeot suffered terminal engine failure.
FX for Timo. The engine stopped.
Suddenly the engine stopped. We don't know what the problem. Probably the camshaft.
With Gronholm already packing his bags for home, Peugeot's hopes rested with world champ Burns and Harry Rovanperä. Last year's Safari gave Skoda their first ever World Championship podium, and Kenneth Eriksson put in a solid performance, running fourth. Belgian Freddie Loix failed to finish the first stage as the clutch broke in his Hyundai. His teammate Armin Schwartz quickly joined the list of retirements when his car suffered alternator failure on the road between stages 1 and 2. Mäkinen was slowed by his team to avoid problems, giving McRae stage 2, but the Finn led by over 2 minutes. Mäkinen held the advantage and came up on Burns, by now down in 10th place, who obligingly moved over to let the Subaru through. Tommy took the advantage again in the third stage of the first day.
Difficult stage, very, very rough.
You've passed Richard somewhere.
Yeah, he was so kind, he let me go because we follow him 5 kilometers in a full dust, and then he stopped and let us go. It was very kind.
McRae was fastest on the fourth Untuleli stage. Thomas Radstrom limped his Citroën into the checkpoint on 3 wheels. Kenya is home to the famous Maasai tribe, but wasn't to be a happy hunting ground for Peugeot after their early season domination. For McRae, the roads were medium rough rather than very rough, but he was still easing off on the worst parts. Carlos Sainz was 3 minutes down after a puncture caused by a broken rear suspension after hitting a dog. Tommy was keeping his own pace using mid-stage times from the team's helicopter. Kenneth Eriksson kept his Skoda on track for 5th place, but would be forced out by a seized gearbox just 100 metres short of the service area. Armin Schwartz had a long wait to be rescued after his retirement. Norwegian Petter Solberg retired 5 kilometres into the 106 kilometre long Untuleli stage as engine failure hit his Subaru. With Gronholm out and Burns trailing, Rovanperä was Peugeot's best hope. Mäkinen damaged the shock absorbers on his Subaru on the first stage on Saturday, the 74 kilometre Kidong Ngema, and lost 8 minutes, dropping to 6th place. We ride with McRae and Nicky Grist as a bird slams into the windscreen. Much of the course seemed to be more suited to rally raiders or off-road buggies than high-speed rally cars. The second stage of the day, Nalangalok, was cancelled due to low cloud cover, which prevented the spotter helicopters from taking off. The third stage was delayed by 20 minutes as a result. McRae was unhappy after Mäkinen failed to move over in his ailing Subaru, claiming he lost time as he trailed the Finn for 20 kilometres before Tommy finally conceded the place. Mäkinen splashes through puddles from a sudden tropical downpour. But within 20 kilometres he was back in the dry, billowing fine dust which blocks filters, chews mechanical parts, sticks in throats and hangs in the air for minutes. Frenchman Sébastien Loeb, 9th for Citroën, set the pace on the opening stage as he closed the gap on Richard Burns. On the same stage, Spain's Carlos Sainz was second in his Ford, 10 seconds slower, and ended the day second to McRae. Rovanperä fought through to a solid third place behind the two Fords. McRae opted for caution on the demanding public gravel roads once in front. Mäkinen was put out by a puncture and later a broken left front suspension. Loeb fought up to 5th for Citroën ahead of Peugeot's French driver Gilles Panizzi. Rovanperä claimed second place as the luckless pair of Sainz and Moya dropped out with a broken oil pump belt. Estonian driver Marko Martin lost 11.5 minutes when his car wouldn't start after an emergency service to change the same belt which sidelined Sainz. Swede Thomas Radström claimed the final podium position on Citroën's maiden outing in the brutal Kenyan event, but he was more than 18 minutes behind Rovanperä. Harry took time from McRae, but the Scot eased off just enough to stay about 3 minutes ahead. During the final stage, the Ford hit a bump and co-driver Nicky Grist bit his tongue. The Welshman calmly navigated the rest of the race with blood trickling from his mouth. By winning the event, his 25th, Colin became the most successful rally driver ever, with one more win than Sainz and Mäkinen. All three have won the world title, Mäkinen 4 times.
Colin, how does it feel to be the most successful world rally driver ever?
Great. I mean, the important thing is the win here, but to have 25 wins is something, you know, a bit special. It's quite a nice record to have.
Colin's win moved him to second in the world title chase behind Finn Marcus Gronholm. The teams now return to Europe for the next round, the Rally of Finland, in early August. To Valmalenko in Italy now for the 6th round of the World Outdoor Trials Series. Heavy overnight rain made the steep, slippery hazards almost impossible for Albert Cabestany and Adam Raga of Spain, Japan's Takahisa Fujinami, Spaniard Mark Collommer, and British 5 times world champ Dougie Lampkin. Fans flocked to the rocky course, 250 kilometres north of Milan. Cabestany's second run on the final day saw him finish 3rd with 30 penalties to keep his 3rd place in the World Championship. Dougie Lampkin would finish 2nd on his Montesa with 21 penalties in only his 2nd defeat this year, but he retains the lead in defence of his world title. Riding much more aggressively, Lampkin's teammate Fujinami matched his score of 21, but only took 7 in the opening lap and won by the virtue of having completed more clean laps, claiming his 2nd win of the year. The final round of the series is in Japan in September, but Lamkin could wrap up his 6th consecutive world title at the next round in France. Just as one dominant champ, Lamkin, faltered, so did another, Valentino Rossi, during practice for the British MotoGP at Donington Park. The London-based Italian suffered concussion, fractured his left thumb and bruised his hip in this uncharacteristic get-off. Minutes later, his teammate, Japan's Tohuru Okawa, also crashed at the same corner, his bike disintegrating spectacularly. Donington is notoriously slippery, a fact blamed on the jet fuel deposits from a nearby airport. In the absence of the two all-conquering Honda four-strokes, Alex Barros claimed provisional pole on his two-stroke Honda. Former world champ American Kenny Roberts Jr. gave Suzuki a promising provisional second place on the grid. Max Biaggi stuck with his existing bike, while his teammate Carlos Checa opted for a redesigned engine in his four-stroke works Yamaha. Biaggi claimed provisional third place on the grid, mostly just by staying upright. American John Hopkins put his two-stroke Yamaha fourth, splitting the four strokes of Biaggi and Checa. Late in the session, Checa also fell victim to the slippery corner that had claimed both works Hondas. Carlos was unhurt and had already managed to record the 5th fastest time. Miraculously, Rossi gets back on his bike during timed practice the next day and, ignoring the discomfort of a broken thumb and a persistent headache, sets a new lap record in the dying seconds of qualifying to claim pole position for his 100th Grand Prix, giving him a 100% record this year. In probably the gentlest crash of his career, provisional pole sitter Max Biaggi steps off and road tests his leathers, but he gets back on to claim 5th place on the grid. Tetsuya Harada claimed 3rd behind a fast-improving Checa, just as he was on the track. Brazilian Alex Barros was quickest throughout the 2 days of practice and qualifying on his two-stroke Honda, but in a flurry of quick laps by Rossi, Checa and Harada, dropped to 4th.
For sure I don't expect the pole position because yesterday did a hard crash, and but today need to say thank you to all the mobile clinic, Dr. Costa, Marco Montanari is my physiotherapist, I don't know in English, and because I'm quite good now, take something for the pain and it's better. I have a little bit of headache, but basically on the bike is not so bad. And need to say thank you also to my team because work very much on the bike and it's possible make this result also with 1 day less than others.
At the start, Rossi got his usual poor launch, but was the Honda filling of a Yamaha sandwich by the first corner, as Checa took the lead on his free-revving, light-crank Yamaha. For 17 laps, the world champ seemed content to follow the Yamaha as the pair gradually pulled away from Biaggi, Rossi setting a new lap record in the process. Just as it was looking like Honda's total domination of the MotoGP class this season might be at an end, Checa crashed on lap 18. With Checa down, if not out, Rossi, unchallenged, went on to win, crossing the line sitting side saddle. This was his 46th Grand Prix win from 100 starts in all classes and the 20th of his 40 starts in the Premier class. The 23-year-old has won 7 of the 8 races so far this year, leads the defence of his title by 77 points, enough to sit out 3 races and still be in front.
Last 10 laps are very difficult because I'm alone and necessary keep the concentration and the rhythm. But anyway, it's a good victory and good for the championship.
In the 250 class, Marco Melandri and Angel Nito traded the lead during the race and battled it out on the final lap. But in the final turn, the Italian slipped by the Spaniard and grabbed the win to move 13 points ahead of his rival in the championship. Just 3 laps from the end of the 125cc race, Lucio Cecchinello crashes out, handing victory to Frenchman Arnaud Vincent, who had fought up from 16th place on the grid to claim his second win of the year on France's National Bastille Day. Spanish teenager Daniel Pedrosa was second, ahead of world champ Manuel Poggiali of San Marino. Vincent's other win was at the opening round in Japan. We go now to a bull ring in Madrid, Spain, for the biggest freestyle expression motocross event in Europe, the Crossfighters. Freestyle is where supercross meets gymnastics and becomes an art form. Spanish supercross hero Edgar Toronteros was one draw card for the 23,000 fans, as was the president of the judging panel, Paris to Dakar KTM star Nani Roma, who arrived on his big desert racer. One of the other judges was Williams BMW Formula One driver Juan Pablo Montoya. 11 of the world's top display supercrossers were up for the event, which saw elimination heats. One early elimination was last year's winner, Mike Jones, who ended up in hospital after a fall. The riders performed off-the-bike aerial stunts after launching up 12-metre high and 25-metre wide jumps. American Mike Metzger was one of the final 3 in the runoffs. Metzger also performed one of his trademark dismounts. Don't try this at home, folks. Then it was Edgar's turn, and the enthusiastic crowd really got behind him. Watch again as he dismounts in mid-air, holding on with just his left hand on the saddle, then remounts in time to land, or performs a complete handstand without upsetting the bike's mid-air balance. Cliff Adoptante of the US also had some great moves to show the crowd, including a radical version of the classical mid-air cross-up used in Supercross to change direction in the air. Cliff's greatest stunt was this awesome feet-first landing. But at the end, it was Edgar who wore the bullfighter's hat and went home with the winner's trophy. That's all we have for this week, but so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.